Hello guys, this is Paul McWhorter with TopTechBoy.com coming to you today from the shores of the mighty River Nile in order to bring you episode number 28 in our incredible new tutorial series where you're going to learn artificial intelligence or you're going to die trying. What I'm going to need you to do is pour yourself a nice tall glass of ice cold coffee. That would be straight up black coffee poured over ice, no sugar, no sweeteners, none needed. And as you're pouring your coffee, as always, I want to give a shout out to you guys who are helping me out over at Patreon. It is your support and your encouragement that keeps this great content coming. You guys that are not helping out yet, take a look down in the description. There is a link over to my Patreon account. Think about hopping on over there and hooking a brother up. But enough of this shameless self-promotion. Let's talk about what I am going to teach you today. And what I'm going to do today is it's a really natural follow-on to our lesson number 27, where we really kind of got a very, very good gesture recognition program going using OpenCV, Python, and Mediapipe. Now, the one thing that I didn't like, the one little improvement that I could see that we could make in that program, it's very accurate right now, but as we were doing our development work, we just had it set up that each time you would retrain it. So like every time the program ran, it would ask you if you wanted to train it. Well, what I want to do today is I want to go in and kind of tweak it where when the program runs, we say, you're going to kind of have a choice. Do you want to open an existing training file or do you want to train? And then if you want to open existing one, which one do you want to open? And then if you want to train it, what do you want to call the file that you're going to put the training data in? And that way, if we want to use the program, we can just boom, if we got some really good hand gestures, we can just go load them up and not have to train every time. I hope that makes sense. So what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to get out of your way. And then what I'm going to need you to do is fire up your most excellent Visual Studio Code, and I can come over here and I believe that you can see that. Okay, believe you got a good view of it. And then what we are going to do is I'm going to remind you that we are working in the Python folder, and let's see, where were we, man? We're going to be on OpenCV 44. And so I need you to click the little plus icon, and then we are going to be in OpenCV-44.py, and the .py is kind of important. And boom, we have a fresh new Python program just waiting for you to write. All right. But now I will admit that we really don't want to start all the way from scratch, and we probably want to kind of pick up where we left off last week. And so what you can do is you can go to the most excellent www.toptechboy.com, and then I'm going to need you to use this happy little search feature over here, and I'm going to need you to search on improved gesture recognition in Python and Mediapipe, and then you'll come up with this happy little page, and this is the code that we have developed so far. We can come over here and double click on the little page, or just single click on the double page icon. That should give us the code. We come back over here and we are going to paste it, and then I'm going to make sure that I'm still happy with the camera that I have set on. Yeah, camera 4 I believe is my webcam right now. Let's go ahead and run this and just make sure the universe is in proper order and this thing still works. I'm not going to do a lot of training on this test run just because I want to make sure that it just runs. So let's just see if it runs. Okay, got some stuff going on down here. Looks like it's getting the TensorFlow going. All right, how many gestures do you want? We'll say 5, and then we're going to call them 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay. Ooh, maybe it doesn't like my camera. Why does it not like my camera? I said camera 4. Sometimes when this thing boots up, it ends up moving my cameras around. And so let's come down here. Maybe I am on camera 0 today. Let's see if I'm on camera 0 today. The thing is, I have like 6 cameras, and it's not always numbered the same depending on like the last time I rebooted. A little bit annoying, but you know, we'll adapt. So let's try it this time. Okay, how many gestures do you want? We're going to go for 5 again. You can't quite see that, can you? Let me bring this up a little bit. There you go. Okay, so what's the first gesture? I'm just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, like that. Okay, now it's ready to start training, so let's pop this up. Okay, so it wants gesture 1, so we'll give it gesture 1. Okay, gesture 2, gesture 3, gesture 4, and gesture 5. Okay, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Close, far, boom, shazam. It's working. All right, so that's good. Now, did you see how we had to, like every time we run the program, we got to train it? Let's go in and see if we can create a training file, okay? And then we'll either load that file or we'll train a new one. And this is going to be easier than you probably think it is if we just sort of play nicely with the way the program already runs. And remember, kind of at the top of the program, what we were doing kind of at the top of the program, let's see here, at the top before the while loop, what we would just say is we would just always say start with train equal true. So just always start in training. And then whether you were training or recognizing, everything was really happening kind of down in the while loop. Okay, well, what we're going to do different here is we're going to do a little bit more prep work upstairs up in this part of the program, and then we're just going to drop down into very, very similar flow of what was happening before. But this time, what we are going to need to do is, let me do a little bit of window management here. Okay, so we're going to come after these key points, all right. Also, I'm not going to use train equal true and false anymore. I'm going to use a 0 and 1, because if I ask for data from the user and I ask him for true or false, then it could matter whether he uses uppercase or lowercase. So a 0 or a 1, I think, would be a lot easier. So the first thing that we need to just do is we need to find out, does the user want to train or recognize? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say train is equal to an int. So it's going to be a number, and then input, and then I got to give it the prompt. So I'm going to say enter 1 to train, enter 0 to recognize. Okay, I think that's pretty good. So now it's a 0 or a 1 whether we train or recognize. I think that makes a lot of sense. So now what we want to do is we're going to say if train equal 1. So if we're going to, that was kind of ugly. I don't know what, I must have hit a page up or something. So if train, and it's little t, I like that little squiggly underline. Let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger for you. Okay, I think that's good. I think let's see if I go one more. Pardon me for a second, but I just want to make sure I make this as easy to read for you guys as possible. I think that looks pretty good. Okay, so now we're going to say if train equal 1. So if I actually want to train it, what do I need to do? Okay, well, if train is going to be equal to 1, then a lot of this stuff, well, first of all, I'm not going to say if train is true anymore because I'm asking it as a 0 or a 1. And now a lot of this stuff, the tolerance I need to keep here either way. So the tolerance is going to be just part of the overall program. But now all this other stuff that I did just assuming that I was going to train, all this was assuming I was going to train, all this needs to be moved up inside of this if, like this. Okay, and now I can get rid of this. Again, the tolerance I need separate from the, whether I'm training or not. So that's always going to be there. Okay, then, so let's see, where are we? This should be inside the if too. So I'm going to set this known gestures to an empty array. Then the number of gestures, that also we need only if we're going to be training. Okay, and then we can get rid of it here. And then we need to get this. I'm going to cut it and move it up here. Okay, so remember, all of this stuff was stuff that we ran every single time before because we were training every single time. But now it's going inside that if statement. So we only do this, like setting up the gesture names array, getting the number of gestures, all that we're only going to do if we want to train. Okay, I'm going to get rid of some of these blank spaces here. Blank lines. Okay, now what we're going to want to do is we are going to want to get the names of the gestures. If we're training, we need to get the names of the gestures. So we're going to cut that part. And then again, that we are only going to do, okay, we are only going to do that if we said that we wanted to train. Now you can see when I pasted, it did not indent these, so I need to indent these 3 lines to be in the for loop. Okay, and then the print is going to be inside of the train. Okay, now that I've said I wanted to train, then I said that I wanted to train up here, and then if train is 1, this is what I do. I'm going to set the train count to 0. That makes sense. I'm going to create a known gestures array that's empty. I'm going to create a number of gestures from the user, and then the gesture names I'm going to initialize, and then I'm going to go through this for loop, and I'm going to get all the gesture names, and I'm going to print them out. Now, what else do I want to do only if I am training? Well, if I'm training a new data set, I better give it a name. So I'm going to say train name. Okay, and that's going to be equal to input. And this is going to be the file name that if we're saving the training data, it's going to need a file name. But I want that if you just click enter, I want it to just use the file name default. And that way you can just click enter when it's asking you these questions, or you can put in a file name if that makes sense. So train name is equal to input. And then what do I want to input? File name for training data. Okay, and so I'm asking them for the file name of training data, and then I'm going to say press enter for default, like that. Press enter for default, and that way you don't have to put in a file name if you don't want to. It'll just store it in the name default. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Now, what we need to see is if the train name is equal nothing, what does that mean? That means that they just pressed enter. So if they just pressed enter, then what do I want to say? The train name is equal to what? Default, right? So I'm putting it in so they don't have to. So the train name is default. Okay. Now also in either case, whatever it is, if they entered a name, then I want to say train name is equal to train name concatenated with .pkl, because what we're going to do is we're going to be creating pickle files, so I don't want the user to have to put that extension. I'm going to put the extension on it for them. So, and that should be a string, so we are going to concatenate it. We are going to concatenate it with the string .pkl. So whatever name they put in, I'm going to put a .pkl on the end of it. Or if they just click enter and that's nothing, and I name it default for them, then on default I'm going to put the .pkl. I hope that makes sense. So now that is really all that we need to do now, because now it's kind of like we're right back to where we were before. When I drop into the while loop, I'm going to have everything that I need in order to train, and then I have train is set to 1. Now the one thing I got to do is I got to go down and I got to change those trues and falses in the loop. I've got to change those trues and falses in the loop to 1s and 0s. So if train is equal to, not true, if train is equal to 1, okay, and then here if train is equal to false, that would be if train is equal to 0, if that makes sense. And then here where I set, when I'm done training and I set train now to false, I need to set it to 0. All right, just because I don't want to ask a user for true or false, because that is the difference between the logical true and false and the string true and false and the integer true and false. So if we just go with 0s and 1s, it's going to be a lot more straightforward. Okay, so I think that is really good. Let's come back up here and look at what we did. So we have the case if train is equal to 1. Now you can see here we're getting ready now to do what? We've done the if train is equal to 1. Well, what do we do? What do we do if train is equal to 0? Well, here I don't want to train, I want to use a file. Well, if I want to use a file, I better know what the file name is. So I'm going to ask them for the file name. So train name is going to be equal to input, and then what training data do you want to use? Question mark, space. Okay. Train name, input. What training data do you want to use? So now I have a train name. Now remember what we also want to do here. We want to just say press enter for default. Like that, press enter for default. So if they just click enter, it'll run out and grab the default and they don't have to do anything. So I think that makes a lot of sense. So now, if train equals 0, now we have the train name. We've gotten that from the user. Now we've got to see if he hit enter without putting anything, then if train name equal the blank, I mean not even a blank, just nothing, an empty string, then what do we want to do? We want train name to be equal to default, the string. Okay, default the string, like that. Okay, now after that, in either case, whether he input it or whether I set it to default, we want to say train name is equal to train name concatenated with what? .pkl, like that, .pkl. Does that make sense? That sure makes sense to me. We're just setting things up before we drop into that while loop, and that while loop is already set up to decide whether it should be training or whether it should be recognizing. And now I'm just kind of setting things up here to read the file if that was needed. Let's get rid of some of these silly blank lines. I like a few blank lines, but not a whole lot in a row like that. Okay, so now we got to think if train is not equal to 0. Okay, I mean if we're not training, if we're going right into recognizing, we better go load that file, because if you are down in the main loop and you're recognizing, it wants to know the gesture names and it wants to know the known gestures. And so since we're not doing that in the loop, we better go out and read the file here, because we've said we're not training it. And if we're not training it, we better go load that data in. So I'm going to say with open, okay, and then train name, that is what we want to open. Man, that box is getting annoying. Okay, we're going to open train name, and then we're going to open it as a read byte. So we're going to read from it, and then we are going to open it as F. You can call it whatever you want, but I'm just going to call it F for file. Now, what do I need to do? I need to get the gesture names. Now, how did I know gesture names? Well, I just got to remember when I write the training thing, I need to write gesture names first, and then I need to write known gestures next. And so I'm going to say gesture names is equal to pickle.load, and then pickle.load from where? F, like that. Now you see how it doesn't like pickle here? Do you see how it doesn't like pickle? Why does it not like pickle? Pickle is a library and we haven't loaded it yet, so we better come to the top and we better import our friend Mr. Pickle. And the number one reason people have trouble with pickle is because they can't spell pickle. If I were in charge, I probably would have spelled pickle, P-I-C-K-E-L. But given that they spell it differently, we better go with their spelling. Okay, so now it should be happy down here when we say load pickle. Okay, so we say gesture names is equal to pickle.load. And then what else do we need to load? We need to load the known gestures is equal to pickle.load F. All right. Now, why did I, like, this is maybe throwing you off a little bit because I'm loading in that training data before I've saved it. Why am I doing that? Because this is a little bit more clear here. It just says, if you are not going to train in the program, then what you need to do is you need to go out and you need to load the training data from a file. All right. Now what we have to think is we need to go down and make sure that if we are doing a train, that we are creating that file. But we can't create it up here because the only way you can create it, you've got to go in and be analyzing images. So we've got to create your known gesture array. We've got to create that down in the loop because we've got to be grabbing frames and analyzing them. And so where we would do it is we would come here in the loop where if train is 1. Okay, we'll come down in the loop where if train is equal to 1. Okay, and then we say if hand data is not equal to nothing. So if we've told it to train and if there is data there, then I need to ask for a gesture. So I'm going to say, please show the gesture, and then press T when ready, and then it's going to wait for the T, and then it's going to say known gesture is find distances, okay, of hand data, and so that is going to be doing the analysis, and then known gestures.append, because right, what do I want? I don't want just the training data for one gesture, I want them all. So known gesture is the training data for one gesture. Known gestures are all of the gestures in an array. Okay, and then I'm going to say train is equal to train count plus 1. Okay, and then if train count is equal to the number of gestures, all right, that makes sense that if now we are done training, we've done all of them that we were supposed to, that we've gotten up to the number that we asked for. Now we say train equals 0, we're done training. But now what do we need to do? We need to save the training data. So I'm going to say with open, and then what do I want to open train name, which we set up at the top. This time though, we are gonna, man, that is so annoying. I've got to make it smaller so that box isn't so annoying. Okay, with open train name, we're writing or reading. We are writing. So this would be write byte WB. So we open that again as F. Now we're going to do a pickle.dump. What do I need to dump first? The gesture names. Remember the gesture names? Okay. And where do I dump them? To F, 1F. Okay. And now I need to pickle.dump and then gesture, not gesture names, known gesture. Is it gesture or gestures? Plural, because up above I built all those training datas into one big array, so it is the plural because I want all of them, if that makes sense. No gestures, comma, F. Okay. How many mistakes did I make? Let me just look and see. I should do better to see if I have any of just those really ugly little, underlined squigglies, and I don't, so I'm going to take a big swig of coffee and we're going to run this thing. And the first thing is, does it run without crashing? And then once it runs without crashing, does it actually train and load and that sort of thing? So let's run this thing. Okay. So far, so good. Don't worry, it always takes a little while. Okay, look at that. That makes me kind of happy. It says, do I want to train or recognize? Well, I better train because I don't have any training files out there, so I'm going to say 1. Okay, I don't like that formatting, so I'm not going to quit the program, but I'm fix it right now because I didn't have a space there. And we always want to have nice formatting. So where we come down here and we say enter 1 to train or 0 to recognize, we should have had a space there, and then that would look a lot better. So I'm going to train, so I'm going to put in a 1, and then how many gestures you want. Let's do an easy one. Okay, let's just say 5. Okay, and now name of gesture 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, like that. Okay, now file name for training data. I think that I just want the default, but again, do you see how I didn't leave a space? And so where was that? Press enter for default. I should have put a space there like that. Okay, press enter for default, and so I'm just going to use the default. I'm going to press enter. Okay, and now it is ready to train, and what it wants is it wants to see a 1. So I'll flash it a 1. Okay, there's a 1, and then a 2, and then a 3, and then a 4, and then a 5. 5. Okay, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Shazam! Look at that. All right. Now it's just working like it's working. It's recognizing. But now the question is, if I run it again, can I go load that without having to retrain? All right. So let's quit. Let's take a big old dose of coffee. Caffeine is the fuel that runs the engineering world. Okay. Let's run it. Okay, this time do I want to what? Train or recognize? I want to recognize, so I'm going to put in a what? A 0, because I want to recognize. And then we press enter. And then what training data do you want to use? I'm just going to press default. That one, I messed up that one too. Do you see how I didn't close that parenthesis? So I need to, and next time it'll be fixed. Close that parenthesis and then put a space. So next time that'll look better. All right, what do I want to use? I just want to use the default, so I'm just going to click enter. And come back down here. I'm going to press enter. Okay, and now it seems to be doing something, so let me fire this up. Okay, unknown. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Boom! Man! Do you see that? Look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, what do we need to do now? We need to make sure that we can have more than one training set, more than one data set. Okay, and so I'm going to leave that as the default, but now I'm going to create another one and see if we can work with multiple training sets. So let's run this thing again. Man, I am excited. This is fun. This is really fun. Okay. Okay, enter a 1 to train or a 0 to recognize. Well, I'm going to train again. Okay, and how many gestures do you want? I want 12. Okay, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, let's go guns up. Let's go high 5. Let's go 4th and prosper. Okay, let's go hook horns. Okay, and then let's go okay. Let's go thumbs up, and let's go Braden. I probably shouldn't do that one. What's the difference between being 16 and being 60? A young man 16 years old will say, wouldn't it be funny? But a 60-year-old will say, wouldn't it be funny? But I probably shouldn't. That's the difference between being 16 and being 60. So we're going to need another 12. I've done the high five, the go forth and prosper, okay, let's do the A-OK, the thumbs up, guns up. Man, which one am I missing? The most important one. Resist the metaverse. Like that. Okay. Now, what do we want? Well, since this one has more, I'm going to call it extended. Okay. I'm going to call it the extended. Okay. So now it wants to start seeing these gestures. So let's give it what it wants. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Guns up. High five is like this. Go forth and prosper. Hook 'em horns. A-OK. You got to kind of, it's different whether you show it the front or the back of your hand. So the thumbs up is a little harder. And then my favorite one, resist the metaverse. Okay, look at that. Now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. High five. Go forth and prosper. Hook 'em horns. Guns up. A-OK. Thumbs up. Boom. All right, guys. Okay. So now we trained it on that. Now can we go back? Now can we go back and just load that? All right. Okay, 1 to train or 0 to recognize. Let's 0 to recognize. What training data do you want? I hope I spelled it extended right the last time. Okay, and now it seems to be doing something, so let's come in here. Let's come in here. What is that unknown? Okay, resist the metaverse. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Guns up. Hook 'em horns. High five. Go forth and prosper. Guns up. Hook 'em horns. Thumbs up. A-OK. Resist the metaverse. Okay, all right. See, guys, now we can train it, and we can have different training sets for different applications. And it really, to me, I just think it is really working well. And so I am super excited about this, because we're able now to have something. And remember how we did that adjustment so it works well independent of how far you are from the camera. And now we don't have to train every time. We can save our training data. We can get a good training set. And now what you can start thinking about is you can start thinking about, what can I do with this? My computer can figure out what I want based on what my hand is doing. And so now what you got to think is, what can you do with that? What can you do with that? That can your computer start doing useful things based on what your hand is doing? Okay. Oh man, guys, I hope you are having as much fun taking this class as I am making it. I am just so excited about this gesture data, and I am really having a lot of fun with it. What I hope is, if you enjoyed this video, you'll give me a thumbs up. Also, it helps me if you leave a comment down below. If you have not already, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. When you subscribe, make sure you ring that bell, and that way you'll be notified when I have future lessons coming out. And what's really good is, man, share this with someone else. Share it with someone else, because the world needs more people coding and doing engineering, and fewer people sitting around watching silly cat videos. Paul McWhorter with TopTechBoy.com, coming to you from a rainy day on the banks of the mighty River Nile. I will talk to you guys later.